Hi, it's me, Emmy Speens, and today we're talking about the dangers of canning on the internet with Bon Appetit and Brad Leone of It's Alive, that basically catapulted Bon Appetit, a little niche culinary magazine, into internet superstardom. It's Alive focused on microbial cultures, fermentation in like food preparation, canning, stuff like that. Now, if you recall, Bon Appetit is a formerly prestigious, notoriously canceled food publication. Started off as a magazine, sorry, you might hear sounds outside, turned into a total YouTube powerhouse that dominated the internet for like years and tried to gaslight Sola about their various hiring practices. I mean, teach cooking or whatever, you know. Okay, I do have to just say here, the video is not necessarily about Bon Appetit, but did you know there was a period where they only paid white editors for their video appearances? It's like, I'm not laughing because that's like funny, but it's like absurd, like not in a haha way, you know what I mean? Back to It's Alive. Fermentation, old-fashioned canning, pastrami making, all of these things fell under the purview of what Brad Leone would demonstrate on the series. However, it's important to note that these were never like billed as straight tutorials, despite like maybe public perception of them. Brad is certainly still positioned as an authority in the videos. The series is more so about his personal exploration in the kitchen with these things. This content was not aimed at novices. Editing did not go out of its way to distinguish that. Mistakes and other variations in methodology were easily cloaked in this like stream of consciousness style endemic to the series. The thing is like Brad Leone is he's such a YouTube character. He's big and over the top and loud and that it's very easy to see why novices, maybe not Bon Appetit's standard core crowd, would be drawn to these videos. Thus, it would be difficult for the novice fermenter, canner, what have you, to determine where the education began and the entertainment ended, or vice versa. During these little bits where Brad Leone is Brad Leoning or otherwise deviating from like tradition, little disclaimers would pop up on the screen reminding viewers to always adhere to food safety practices. The problem arises because these rarely had any specificity about which part of Brad's process was breaking food safety guidelines. In actuality, these little warnings just amounted to cheeky little winks and acknowledgements to the camera that yeah, Brad is playing with food safety guidelines, but they're not going to tell you which ones. But by warning viewers at all, by going that little extra bit, and even if it's just a legal obligation, they're kind of acknowledging the context that something wrong is happening, right? Also, I'm sorry for my mouth sounds. It's just like, I had this idea for this video, and it never progressed beyond me eating a sandwich. But critics say more helpful than a generalized warning while Brad Leone flaunts science in the background would be a concrete explanation as to why Brad's experimentation could prove dangerous for the home cook. For example, in his video demonstrating the process of making pastrami, Brad mentions that pink curing salts are traditionally used, but he won't be using them. Instead, he describes an alternate methodology involving locally pressed celery juice without describing why he's chosen to deviate from traditional methodology at all. But a lot of commenters and food critics, either by trade or hobby, notably Joe Rosenthal on Instagram, who you'll see splattered throughout this video, I hope he's not mad at me, he's done great work, you should go follow him, would point to Brad's process as culturally insensitive, potentially unsafe, and definitively, objectively gross. But Brad suggests that viewers can easily find fresh pressed celery juice at their local market. The problem with this that Bon Appetit's editors did not care to point out to viewers is that celery juice will produce nitrates in unpredictable quantities, whereas celery powder is much more controllable and predictable and therefore safer in its usage in preventing the growth of botulism. Nitrate production is essential in curing meats so that they can be safe to eat later. It's totally fine to experiment. Like, obviously Brad's a professional, I think. You know, like, it's not that big of a deal to experiment, but it is kind of a big deal to position yourself as an authority and then be so flippant without proper explanations and disclaimers and so on and so forth. Why did Brad switch to celery juice from celery powder?
It's done with a pink curing salt. I'm gonna wane away from that, do a little bit of experiment with some other natural ways to achieve some nitrates into your meat. We're gonna use some celery and some sauerkraut juice along with some traditional spices.
I hate to say it, but I feel like he literally just swaps out ingredients sometimes to be like a different bitch. You know, like, oh, he's that girl. Oh, he's different. He's built different, you know? You're not special. Like, celery juice is not gonna work magically for you where it hasn't for other people. You know what? I don't know. Whatever. So he assures his viewers that they can literally go to a market and get celery juice.
You got a nice little cold press store by your house. A lot of them have celery. It's actually very good for you in the juice form. And you can buy celery juice. It's a hell of a lot easier than what we're gonna do. I don't have a juicer, so I'm gonna...
I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like someone that's just like experimenting alone in the kitchen. That seems like somebody that's like advising their audience, like giving advice, like literally positioning themselves as an authority. And I think if Brad didn't do that, this wouldn't have blown up as it did, but it did. Worse yet, beyond the potential for lethal botulism, the pastrami video in particular came under fire for the poor quality of the final product. Experts and enthusiasts alike pointed to the gnarled, gray final product that even I, a food dum-dum, knew was not walking in the light of God. Pastrami is pink, okay? Like something else. No, but it is though. But it is. And it's not supposed to be gray and brown. Did you know that? Because like instinctively when I say that, I'm like, yeah, no duh, right? But he is very happy with himself at the end, which is like, however, that's not even the most problematic It's Alive installment to come out with Brad. That dubious honor would have to be the seafood canning episode. Yeah, wherein Brad shows his viewers how to can seafood for some reason. Probably pretty self-explanatory. I probably didn't need to break that one down for you, but the problem is actually not that canning meat and fish ruins the texture and quality of the meat, a tragedy which I think probably should be more at the forefront of the scandal, but whatever, let's move on, breeze by that. The issue is that, as you probably predicted, Brad showed his audience an unsafe method of canning seafood. To make most foods safe, but specifically meat and fish, you need to pressure can them. Pressure canning is pretty much the only accepted standard for making meat and seafood shelf stable in cans. You can use a method called water bath canning that is meant for other types of foods with high acidity levels that have different types of preservation techniques, because in water bath canning, the act of canning is not actually what is keeping the food shelf stable. It hits different. All right? Whereas pressure canning is the act of canning food that's been cooked and it's like there's nothing in it and it prevents the growth of it. Yeah. You can water bath can meat and seafood, but this will not end up with a shelf-stable final product. You'll just kind of make it worse to eat and still have to eat it in a 4 to 5 day timeline and keep it in your fridge. So it's like, what's the point? However, Brad did not disclaim any of this to his audience. Brad opted to demonstrate a water bathing method for canning his seafood without disclaiming to his audience that not only is the final product not shelf stable in the long term, it really needs to be kept in the fridge even in the short term. Food safety experts and critics raised hell when this video dropped, and Bon Appetit took the video down but maintained that they forewarned audiences in the video that the finished product wouldn't be shelf stable. Brad also put up a statement on his Instagram echoing similar deflection strategies. You can kind of get the vibe immediately that someone in HR told him to put it up. However, the moment in the video they're referring to where the consulting canning expert mentions in passing that this is a viable strategy for short-term shelf stability is basically a throwaway line.
We're hitting 190.
That's a great range. That's a great range for more of like a shorter term shelf stable product. So you put that in your chill it down, throw it in the cupboard for like a little bit of time, or in a cool cellar.
And it isn't further echoed by established authority in the video, which is Brad, and they don't go further out of their way to elaborate that shelf stability in this context literally still means you have to put it in the fridge. Really not shelf stable at all. Do you see where viewers might be confused or even open themselves up to dangerous practices? I mean, just to reiterate, the consulting expert did not recommend that viewers keep the final product in their fridge, and neither did Brad. That did not come up. But let's be honest with ourselves for a second. Why did It's Alive blow up? Brad has a great on-screen personality. That's 100% true. He seems like a really nice, great guy, but we can't ignore the further context around Bon Appetit. And I think that's the first time I've said the name right, where they were aggressively racist for years in both their hiring practices and their treatment of employees. This is something that the people responsible for this racist, toxic work environment already acknowledged. Chefs of color had their cultures mined for content and then were cast aside, while literally only white editors were paid for their appearances. So knowing all of this, the idea that they would go out of their way for so many years to elevate and subsequently protect this man who was actually putting his audience potentially in danger, enthusiasts, novices that trusted him and looked up to him. It is worth mentioning that the best content on that channel for years and years and years was created by people that were underpaid and underappreciated, if not outright abused, right? So, that is how Brad Leone almost poisoned a nation. Just for context again, this is what pastrami is supposed to look like. The only reason it's shiny is because there's dressing on it, but it's pink. Like my. Well, that's all I got for you today. Just like a short little video about like the history of the It's Alive series with Brad Leone on Bon Appetit. Joe Rosenthal on Instagram, he's the creator that like how I found this whole like controversy or whatever in the first place. I highly recommend you go look at his Instagram. He has great little highlights, like you can just scroll through, that'll be your whole fucking weekend, I swear to God. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like me. And also I have like spicy sites and stuff, so if you want to see my butt. Anyway, thanks guys, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.